we welcome him. Wow, good. There we go.
All right. Thank you so much, Marcella. So kindly tell me whether you can clearly hear me so that I may not be addressing myself. So Marcella, can you hear me?
From my end, I can hear you clearly and see you.
Okay, great. If you can even see me, that's amazing. All right, thank you so much. And I'm so much excited today to have this conversation with us because this is a very, very noble conversation. One of the conversations that nobody should keep quiet about. This is a conversation that should be hitting the headlines, whether it is news, whether it is other social media platforms, everybody should be having this conversation because the rate at which women and even men are being abused through violence or violent acts, it's very high. It is very high. It is alarming. So it is amazing that we are having this conversation so that anybody who has been a victim of gender-based violence can find his healing or her healing in these sessions that we are going to have until Friday. If there is someone who is already living in an environment that is violent or abusive, then that person, through the sessions that we are going to have, will have the knowledge to know the steps that they are supposed to take, to know where they should go, what they should do, so that they may not risk their lives in that environment. And lastly, if there is someone who is going to attend these sessions, and there is somebody who might in future find themselves in this kind of an experience where they are in a violent environment, then we are going to equip them with the skills that they are going to use just in case in future anyone here might find themselves in that kind of a position. To kick off this conversation, I want to say that gender-based violence is not for the selected few. Gender-based violence is not for the poor. It's not for the rich. It's not, the victims are not kids, not adults, not male or female. Gender-based violence knows no race or gender or, ethnic group or socioeconomic status. It knows none of such. So anybody, anywhere in this world can be a victim of domestic violence. And it's amazing that we are having this conversation so that we together can be able to create a world, a community, and even a neighborhood, and even at an individual level, a safe environment where people are able to live happily, um, being able to enjoy life. Because when you are living in an environment where unahofia maisha yako, then again you cannot live at peace. You cannot enjoy life. You cannot enjoy the things that you are doing simply because the environment itself is life threatening for you. I've been introduced so much well. Actually, Marcella, while you were introducing me, I felt like I could swing my head like this. From my Chinese language, we used to call it sadomado. Sadomado. I don't know whether where you swing your head. Maringo kidogo. Thank you for that introduction. I don't think there's anything I would really want to add to the introduction. But one thing that I can say is that I'm so passionate about mental health. When it comes to mental health, I'm always there. When it comes to counseling, I'm always there. Because there are so many people out there who need someone to listen, not even someone to talk to them, not even someone to talk with them, but someone to just listen. And I just happen to be so good at that. So I love mental health conversations. That is why I am here today, so that we can have this amazing conversation about gender-based violence. Now, I'll start the conversation so that by the end of this presentation, In case there is anyone who may have a question or anything they want to say, we can have ample time for that. However, as we start, I believe you can be able to see my presentation. Can you? Kindly, Marcella, you can let me know, or someone can give me a thumbs up. Can you see what I'm presenting?
Yes.
Good, amazing. So yes, so we are talking about gender-based violence now. In this period of, thank you so much, everyone. In this period of 16 days of activism, and these 16 days is where people are proactively engaged in hearing conversations, providing safe spaces, approaching this matter of gender-based violence with non-judgmental approach, and giving people that hearing ear and a shoulder to cry on those who have been affected. So from the first page, that's the topic, and now my name. So you can see my photo. Please don't think right now you can see I'm wearing a black shirt. So sometimes people tell me, Eliud, mpaka wakati uko online unavalia official. And please don't be confused by that. You might be surprised to realize that nimevalia shirt official, lakini niko na short and niko na slippers na socks ambazo zimeraruka vidole, you know. So vidole zimetoka nje, vidole zinaota jua. So that's very important so that we can start this conversation. Now, everyone, welcome to our presentation today. I'll now go to the slide 1, where we are going to talk about introduction to this conversation. So we're just going to look at introduction, types of domestic violence, and we're also going to look at stigma. So, and also prevalence. So that is the content of today's session, online session. And then now from tomorrow, we'll be looking at other areas, other fundamental areas of domestic violence. By the end of the week, we will have covered everything that there is to cover about domestic violence or gender-based violence. Now, as an introduction, I have a very simple introduction here, which says that gender-based violence refers to harmful acts directed at an individual based on their gender. Someone is talking? Okay, in case there's any issue, please just raise it immediately so that I may not continue while there's an issue. So gender-based violence is is a harmful act directed at an individual based on their gender. I want to say that almost every time we talk about gender, the only thing or the first thing that comes in the mind of the majority is women. The moment you mention the word gender, most people have it in mind that we are talking about women, but it's not true. When people hear other words such as race, they think that we are talking about black and white, but that is not the case. When people hear us talk about what we call now the word is disappearing, but specifically on gender-based violence, when we talk about gender-based violence, most people think that we are talking about women. But the reality is, women, yes, are the majority victims, because most men are the perpetrators when it comes to gender-based violence. But we also have men who are victims of gender-based violence. As we will be looking at the conversation today, and especially the types, you will realize that most men are suffering, especially the psychological violence, without being aware, without knowing that actually that is violence. So when we are talking about gender-based violence, we are not talking about women. We are talking about any gender. It could be a member of the LGBTQ group. It could be male or female. Anybody is a victim of gender-based violence. So, and actually at that point, that's where I can say, most of the times when we are having these conversations of gender-based violence, most people have it in mind that gender-based violence is a women issue. Hiyo mnaongea nini? Ati gender-based violence. Hiyo ni mashida ya wanawake. Wanawake ndio wanagogwa huku. Wanawake ndio wananyoroshwa. Wanawake ndio wanauawa. Wanawake no. It's actually true that gender-based violence is more of a man's issue than it is of a women issue. Why? Because women are the victims. Might surprise you to realize that actually in this webinar that we are having right now, this virtual training, majority you find are actually women. They are women. But in reality, if we can focus on men handling these issues, men talking to their fellow men about not fighting or abusing and being violent to their wives and other women that are in their lives, then I think that will be one of the most successful approach that we can use when it comes to gender-based violence. Because right now, even if we educate women and then we tell them that this is what gender-based violence is, this is how you can realize you are in a violent environment, this is how to get help. Even if we do that, you come to realize that there's a very common question that we will be answering towards the end of this training, probably the last or the second last day. Because most people always ask, why do women stay in an abusive and violent environment? Why did she choose to stay? She should have left. But you come to realize that majority of those people who are living in domestic violent environment, those women are actually most of them usually choose to stay. Most of them will choose to stay. And then we ask ourselves, why? Why don't they leave? Then we will be answering that question. But what I'm saying is, domestic violence or gender-based violence is more of a man's issue than it is of a women issue. Because if we can get men to stop abusing women, instead of getting women to protect themselves from men, then we will have solved the problem more efficiently, more effectively. Why? Because women will not need to protect themselves from men who are abusive, because we have talked with men and men have agreed to not be abusive. You see, if we don't have an abuser, we don't have a victim of the abuse. If we don't have a perpetrator, we don't have a victim who has been abused by the person who is initiating or catalyzing the abuse or the violence. You see? So it is very important that we involve men in this conversation. Very important. If actually men can take the forefront, if men can be the ones steering, starting these conversations, initiating this conversation, talking to their fellow friends who are men. Wewe kama a male, unaenda unapatana na best yako. Na obviously unajua wanaume kwa wanaume huwa wanaongea sana. Wanaume, men to men, they open up. Utasikia mwanaume, huyo bibi, huyo mama, jana nimemgonga vibaya sana. Mimi si mtu wa kucheza hivi. Jana nimemgonga hapo. Alikuwa anajaribu kunibebeleza niachane na yeye, lakini mimi nikagonga yeye huko kumejaa madamu. And then you find when a man is told that by a fellow man, he is like, hiyo ndio kukua mwanaume. That is what it means to be a man. Watu wanataka kugogwa. Usimpe ati space hapo akukalie chapo. Usijui usimbebeleze hapo. Akileta dini gonga yeye kofi moja. Akileta nyoko chapa yeye. You see? So if as a man, your fellow man comes to you and gives you that kind of a narrative, if you encourage them, if you encourage that behavior, you are not helping at all. You are making the situation worse. You should sit down with that brother, with that friend, with that co-worker, with that guy who is opening up and telling him that he is fighting or he is beating his woman, whether sexually, physically, as we'll be looking at such. You're supposed to sit him down and tell him, now, man, I don't think you are doing the right thing. I don't think fighting a woman makes you any more of a man. I actually think that when you hit a woman, when you abuse a woman, when you're violent to a woman, you become less of a man. You know, you actually reduce your zilikuwa zinaitwa aje hizi vitu tulikuwa tunaongeza. Somebody to tell me what were they being called? Something point. Please, someone to type that and aniambie. Kuna vitu tulikuwa tunasema when a male you do something, kuna points una reduce. See poker point. Zilikuwa zinaitwa aje? Someone. Good gangster. Kuna there's somebody, yes, good gangster point. Exactly. So you need to sit that guy down. Unamwambia now. The moment umegoga a woman, umetoa gangster point, umeredeem zote, uko zero. You know? So as men, we need to make sure that we are starting conversations of talking to our fellow men, telling them, stop fighting your wife, stop fighting your girlfriend, stop being violent, stop abusing her, you know, so that now we will not have women who are struggling and living in tears and suffering simply because there are men who are abusing them. Now, not to spend so much time on that, let's go to the prevalence. Sorry, I think I misspelled the word preference. I know that if I had not mentioned, most of you would not have realized. So I wish I had not mentioned that I've actually misspelled the word, the letter R instead of L, nikaweka R. But please, you need to forgive me because I'm from Nyandarua, and you know our cash crop. Cash crop is the potatoes. And sometimes those cash crops, sometimes they just want to manifest. You know, kuna ile dogo dogo yenye pali umetoka, sometimes inataka kukuaibisha. So even in writing, unfortunately, you know, this is writing, not even speaking. So you can be sure I am worse at speaking when it comes to R and R. So let's continue. So the prevalence of gender-based violence is actually very high because we are talking about generally 34% of women, and actually the statistics are showing that these women are from the age of 15 years. Majority of victims of gender-based violence are at, you know, the age of between 15 years and above. So 34% of women every single day are victims of gender-based violence. So that means that out of 100 women that you're going to meet somewhere, like right now, we are, I think, 70 something. Let's say, for example, we are 75 or around there. So we are 75. Let's say it's just ladies who are here. So if you can do the statistics of 34% of 75, you'll come to realize that more than 20 women who are already in this platform could be victims of domestic violence. That is to tell you that in every 100 women you meet, 34 of them are victims of physical violence. They have been hit by someone. They have been slapped by someone. Amechukuliwa, you know, amegogwa na kijiti somewhere. And you know, those kind of things. Amegogwa, amechapwa makofi, and you know, amegogwa na kikombe, sahani, and those kind of things. Zile vitu watu hugogana nazo. Unaweza pata mpaka mtu amekugoga na kijiko, amekurushia kijiko. Mwingine anakurushia toothpick inakuja imekudunga, you know? So that is physical violence. So 34% is a very high number. That 4% is not a joke. Out of 100 women, I'm not talking about statistics za Jamaica. just to make that clear. If you Google online or you do your research, you realize that these are statistics of Kenya. Sijakuletea statistics za US, sijakuletea statistics za United States or any other country. I'm talking about Kenya. Statistics za Kenya. The recent ones. Inaonyesha kwamba that 4% of women, or generally it's women because they are the majority, they are victims of domestic violence. Sexual violence, though not very high, but it's 13% is not something that we can say that it is not high. 13% is also a very high you know, percentage when it comes to sexual abuse. Now, these are people, women, both men and women, who have been sexually abused. This could be maybe girls, especially girls, who have been raped. And sexual abuse is not always just rape. Because as we mentioned from the beginning, is that gender-based violence refers to harmful acts So if you do any act or if you do something that harms someone, whether physically, as now we are talking about, whether emotionally, whether sexually, so for as long as you're harming that person, then you are abusing that person. So when you talk about sexual violence, it's not just the penetration sex that we call rape. If for example you're traveling in a matatu, public means, so uko kwa matatu and then a guy ameingia hapo, jamaa hao anaitwa mang'aa. I don't really like using that word, but these guys who don't even have self control, and then that guy as already anakuja inaitwa kusmako ama inaitwa kuspako ama inaitwa whatever that one. So anakuja anakuguza ama anakugonga, your buttocks, let me use that word. So that is also sexual violence. You see? So any gesture that someone anafanya kuonyesha kwamba without your consent they want to sexually engage with you, either kukuguza, sometimes, okay, please don't let me do that, because you find some men wenye if for example it's a man in a public setting, so unapata maybe amekuangalia and then hana self control, so definitely maybe amepata an erection. So akipata an erection na it's a public means, anaanza kujiguza hivyo, anaanza kukaza trouser ndio uone chenye what his mama gave him. So anaanza kufanya vitu. So that is also sexual abuse, because that person is sexually trying to tune you into sexual desires or sexual urges or sexual thoughts. So that is also a form of abuse. So we should not just say that when it comes to sexual abuse, or sexual violence, is just penetrative sex that people call rape, or what we call rape. So that is not the case. So any form of sexual gesture, that is also sexual abuse. There's so many people who are not aware that even in marriage, we have rape. You can rape your wife. Well, Biblia inasema, I don't know, maybe somebody who ako familiar sana na Biblia unaweza tuambia hiyo kavasi yenye inasema kama mumeoana msinyimane. That's the Bible, not me. So don't persecute me, please. Don't start throwing stones at me. I hope there are no stone emojis in this platform. so that I don't have people throwing stone emojis at me. So it's the Bible that says that when you are married, I think it is Peter or Paul, somebody, that when you're married, hamfai kunyimana. You're supposed to not deny each other the conjugal rights. But if unasikia hamfai kunyimana, that means that both of you, even in marriage or in a relationship, in a kind of a romantic relationship, sex also should be should be consensual. There should be consent from both parties. If you go home and you meet your wife from work, and then she's not in the mood, or she's probably on her periods, or she's just not interested in having sex with you as a husband. If you rape her, if you have sex with her forcibly, that is also rape. If she goes to the police station or somewhere, and then she reports that matter, and accidentally maybe during that sexual engagement, that rape, maybe kulikuwa na damu, ametoka pahali, umemulalulia guo, umemharibu in one way or another, then as a husband unaweza fugwa jela because umerepu bibi yako. So it should be consensuous or consensuous, something like that. So there should be consent. Yeah. But again, as a wife or as a husband, again, usikuwe ati kila siku una mood. So hiyo sasa ndio naambiaga watu, sasa inabidi utembelee yule the lady hapo kwa kijiji ama kwa the nearest town mwenye anauza ile uji ya madasho. Uji ya libido. Okay? So unaenda unauziwa the libido one, ile uji power. So kama huna moods, so find a way kupata moods, because again, when you are married, huwezi kuwa ati a whole 1 month huna mood. Hiyo sasa, that's a different story. So kindly let us know that when we are talking about sexual abuse, sexual abuse can even happen in marriage. So let us not mistake that. Now, we are talking also about 35% of intimate partners violence. This is to mean that 35% of people who are in intimate relationships, they have been abused by their partners. That is to say that in every 35 people who are in an intimate relationship, they have been abused by their partner. This abuse could be either physical, sexual, emotional, psychological, as we'll be looking at those types of domestic violence. So this communicates a lot, actually, because I think those people who says that love is a scam, well, I'm not saying that they are right, well, because love is not really a scam, because there are people who are living happily after, well, very few, because there's somebody who is asking, unasema happily ever after, I mean, nimekuwa kwa relationship sabini. You know, this is the 77th relationship, and you are talking about happily ever after. Well, nimesikia na wewe. But there are guys out there who are enjoying marriage, who are enjoying relationships, who are happy in their relationships, you know. So we need to ask ourselves, why are those people who are in love abusing each other? I thought people get into relationships and into intimate relationships because they want to be happy, they want to enjoy life, they want to live happily ever after. So we are putting a very big question mark on intimate partner violence, intimate relationships, because the highest number of people who have been abused are actually abused by people they love or used to love, or those people who are close to them. So intimate relationships are very dramatic these days. That's why we are really encouraging those people who are getting into intimate relationships to really take their time to understand the kind of people that they are getting involved with, the kind of people that they are getting in love, they are falling in love with. And I don't know why we call it falling in love. Because when you are in love, nothing really falls. Everything seems to rise. You know, you are a little bit happy, now you are happier. So the happiness has risen. So you used to smile once in a day, now you are smiling 10 times in a day. So everything rise, you know. So you are falling in love with someone who later turns out to be the person who you never thought could, turn out to be. That's why you hear most people in relationships saying, hey, you are no longer the guy I said I do to. You are no longer the romantic guy you were when we met. You are no longer the person I knew. That is because you never took your time to really know that person in totality. You never really took your time to see the dirty rays of this person which were hidden under the bed within the first maybe few months of the relationship, that the time that you spent with this person. This person brides you with what we call love bombing. Unaletewa maua, unaletewa chocolate, unaletewa kila kitu, everything, kila kitu anajua unapenda, unafanyiwa hizo vitu zote. And then now this person is just setting a trap for you. Anakutrap hivi ndio uingie kwa box. Ukiingia kwa box inafungwa, alafu visu zinaanza kuingizwa huko, kwa kando huko, unapata visu zinawekwa huko, unadungwa na visu, vitu mingi ziko huko, hadi bomb, unapata hadi grenade ziko huko ndani ya box. And then wewe ulidanganyiliwa na tumaua ukaingia kwa box. So we really need to be very careful, extremely careful with intimate partners, with intimate romantic relationships, because these are the cause of the crisis that we are seeing in the current society. That so many people are dying because of love, but it's not really love, it is lust. We will be talking more about that when we'll be talking about causes and how to deal with domestic violence. We will be talking more about that. Lastly, on prevalence, which I decided to misspell, we have FGM. So FGM is also a form of abuse, because FGM, that is female genital mutilation, is illegal. In most countries, there are still countries and cultures and societies where FGM is still practiced, but in our country, Kenya, it is illegal. So FGM is also another form of violence. Another form of abuse, because when you mutilate or you circumcise a lady, there's literally no benefit to that, but there's more disadvantages when it comes to that because of the breeding, the infections, and so many other issues that usually are associated with that. So FGM is at 27%. And us talking about FGM in this country, we should be talking about a smaller percentage or even a 0% when it comes to FGM. So it is for us to join hands and make sure that in any conversations, in any environments, in any hearing conversations that we are having, we are speaking against FGM so that we may not have our girls who are being abused through mutilation. Now, I would like us to look at types of GBV, that is gender-based violence. There are so many other forms of gender-based violence, but the major ones that I was able to capture are the 5 major types of gender-based violence. The first type is physical violence, very common. This one we know it. This one we've heard of it. Just the other day, I think today's on Monday, last week, we had this case that really went viral of a lady, I think called Wajiko or Wajiro, something like that. And she was abused, physically by the husband. I think Cyrus. I'm not very good at the names, but that case happened last week and went viral. So that was physical abuse. Amekatwa vidole, wengine unaona amegwarwa uso, wengine wamerushiwa maji baridi, mwingine amechomwa na vitu zingine. So that is physical violence. So wakati mtu anakugonga because of maybe a disagreement that you had, because of a misunderstanding. So that is physical violence. That is when somebody is hitting you, somebody is using any object to cause you pain or to inflict pain on you. So that is physical violence. That is very common. Sexual abuse, also very common, very popular. We have seen the statistics of both physical and sexual violence. Physical violence at 34% and sexual violence at 13%. And the other one is verbal violence, which most people usually normalize. So unafikiria ukiitwa nyoka, well, ukiitwa nyoka, let me use that word. So somebody says, oh, aliniita nyoka lakini unajua mimi si nyoka. Well, yes, you should handle it from your end. But again, when somebody is constantly abusing you verbally, and sio kuitwa nyoka, that is just the basic ones, ile ya kuitwa ng'ombe, kuitwa nyoka, wewe ni buzi sana, wewe ni kodoo sana, wewe ni porcupine sana, wewe ni, whatever other names. There are other form of verbal abuse that usually are presented in a gift box. They are presented in a gift box. There's somebody who is going to tell you that you'd look nicer or you'd look more beautiful in a wig instead of ya kunyoa. And the tone that is being used in that conversation is not a peaceful tone. It's not somebody who is communicating. It's somebody who is abusing you. You see? Because there's a friend who is telling you that one you understand, but there's somebody else who is using words, abusive words, lakini hizo abusive words zimerapiwa vizuri, zinakaa kama nika gift kako hapo ndani. Somebody who is telling you that you are good for nothing. Somebody who is telling you that you are worthless. Somebody mwenye anakuita maraya. That's very common. Anakuita maraya wewe. Somebody who is telling you that those kind of words that are unpleasant, though that is what we call verbal abuse. Verbal abuse is very common in most relationships, but watu wengi huwa wananyamazia. But what you do not realize is that majority of these types of gender-based violence, one of them usually causes the other. When you see somebody who is verbally abusing you, because most of them will start there, when you see somebody who is verbally abusing you, that is to tell you that that person has that element of violence or abuse in them. And that verbal violence, if not controlled, if not tamed, then it might mature into physical violence. If physical violence is not tamed, then it is going to mature into sexual violence, and then into psychological violence, and then into socio-economic violence. So that is why I always say that if you spot in any kind of environment or relationship that you are in, if you spot any form of abuse or violence, don't keep quiet. Don't ignore it saying, ameniita tu ng'ombe, ameniita tu maraya, ameniambia mimi tu ni I'm good for nothing, ameniita tu useless, ameniambia I cannot amount to anything, ameniambia those kind of words. So those are just words. They are not just words. They are not just words. And especially if that person is repeatedly saying such abusive words, those words are most likely going to mature into other forms of abuse. Now, kindly someone just give me a thumbs up, just a reaction, so that I can know that we are together. Just a reaction, so that good. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So that means that we are still together. We are flowing smoothly. Hapo sasa ndio huwa wanasema kaede kaede because you have given so many thumbs up, then tunasema kaede kaede. If this was a party or let's say a party ama bash, ningewauliza tuendelee ama tusiendelee, but because it's not a party, you see bash, I'm not going to say that, so tutaendelea tu because you have given me a thumbs up. So the other form of gender-based violence is psychological violence. This is one of the most common but not spoken about, underrated, muted form of abuse. Hii ni yenye watu mostly huwa wanaita na Kiswahili vita ya baridi. Unauziwa baridi na unakuwa umeuziwa baridi na pia uko na kakitu kakununua hiyo baridi, because unajua unaweza uziwa baridi lakini ukose kununua, so hiyo baridi inapita tu. Watu bado wanasema kuuziwa uoga. So kuuziwa uoga. So this is now what we call the psychological violence. Psychological violence is very common, and this is one of the most common violence in men or abuse in men. So kuna wanaume wengi sana huwa wanapigwa hii vita, the psychological one. Huyu ni mwanaume mwenye ameambiwa, wacha nikuambie, ukijaribu ufike hapa nyumbani past 6, wewe utajua kwenye utalala. Ukijaribu ufike hapa past 7, for the entire 3 weeks, ninakunyima na si maji ama chakula ya tumbo. So these men are being psychologically abused, because the moment somebody creates a psychological environment whereby they create fear, they inflict fear in you, that is psychological violence, that is psychological abuse. So most women also suffer this. This is where in a relationship unasikia unaambiwa, na jiji, wacha nikuambie wewe, siku moja nitakuja hapa nitawadunga visu. Siku moja nitakuja hapa nitawadunga visu na mimi mwenyewe nijihang na nikufe. That is psychological violence. Why? Because unauziwa uoga. That person is inflicting fear in you. And when you are in an environment where you are fearing for your life, where you are afraid that something might happen, then you feel you cannot even be able to concentrate with your daily activities. You cannot even be able to do the things that you normally do. So that is psychological violence. Psychological violence is very common, but people usually ignore it. And as I have told you, majority of these types of domestic violence or gender-based violence, they usually mature into the next one. So if you ignore psychological violence, it's most likely going to mature into verbal violence, then physical, then sexual, and then socio-economic. So kama kuna mtu anakutishia maisha, another Swahili term that is mostly used, anakutishia maisha, you need to take that serious. Why? Because if you ask most or majority of the gender-based violence victims, they are going to tell you a story. And this story will begin like this. Ameishi kusema ataniduga, ameishi kusema atanipiga, ameishi kusema atakuja nyumbani atuue kila mtu na ajiue yeye mwenyewe, lakini mimi nilikuwa tu nafikiria he was joking. Mimi nilikuwa tu nafikiria he was just doing it, or he was just saying it juu alikuwa mlevi. Most narratives usually start like that. And that person was psychologically abusing you by saying that siku moja nitakuja na niwaue hapa. Wewe ukifanya tu hivyo hiyo kitu unafanya tena, siku moja nitakudunga visu, watu wenu watakukujia hapa ukiwa umekufa, nitakugonga wewe. Wacha nikuambie, ukifanya hivyo tena, it is either mimi niende Kamete prison na wewe, sorry, not Kamete but Lang'ata. I think there's Lang'ata prison. I think so. So by the end of the day, wewe ukifanya hiyo kitu unafanya tena, wewe one of us atarara Kamete, atarara Lang'ata prison, wewe mwingine atarara Lang'ata cemetery. You see, those are kind of the languages that are used. Yeah, that if you do that again, both of us tutarara Lang'ata, lakini mmoja atarara Lang'ata prison, mwingine atarara Lang'ata cemetery. So those are psychological violence that are used to inflict fear. Mtu anafanya kitu, ama hata for example anakuja nyumbani alafu anachukua kisu anaanza kuguzisha, what do we call that, Sasa sitaki kutumia my Chinese from Nyandarua, so which is the best term that we can use for that. So mtu tu anakuja anaanza kufanyisha hizo kisu hivi kwa ukuta, kwa ukuta hivi, or somebody mwenye huwa anabeba kisu kwa mfuko kila wakati ukienda kwa nguo zake as a wife, unapata kuna kisu kadogo kamewekwa kwa mfuko. Kila wakati unapata kuna there are some weapons ziko somewhere, huwa anaweka panga kwa nini chini ya mattress. Those are psychological violence. Those are psychological abuse. So we need to be aware of psychological abuse, because psychological abuse is even more dangerous than physical abuse. Because somebody who is abusing you psychologically, they are enslaving you. They are preventing you from being able to reason or logically do things in your life, being able to peacefully do something or engage into something. Because when you're psychologically disturbed, you cannot be able to do most of the things that you want to do with your life or in your life. And these are the people who are going to psychologically abuse you, and then because they want to take advantage of you, anakuuzia uoga, and then juu ya hiyo uoga atakuwa anakuambia hebu nipe ama nikuue. Unakumbuka nilikugonga jana, hebu nipe. So you have no otherwise, you have to do it. Hebu nifanyie hivi ama nikufanyie hivi, ama nikuadhibu hivi. So we need to be very careful about psychological violence, because it is very, very common in most relationship and environments, but very few people talk about it, very few people recognize it. So later we will be talking about how you can be able to tell when somebody is physically abusing you, sexually abusing you, verbally abusing you, or psychologically abusing you. We will have a session where we will be deeply looking at these key types in details, but today we are just laying the foundation so that in the next few days we can dig deeper into every type of these gender-based violence. Now, lastly, we have socioeconomic violence. Socioeconomic violence ni pahali unanyimwa, number one, unanyimwa pesa. You know your husband akona pesa, lakini kila wakati ukiitisha pesa unaadua hakuna. Sasa nilikupatia 200 asubuhi. Sasa nilikupatia, and most likely this is money that you want to use to be able to take care of the basic needs of the family. Kama ni mtoto anahitaji diaper, lakini unaadua alicycle. Osha hiyo diaper, osha diaper. I've even seen a relationship where the boyfriend akona pesa, yes, lakini hawezi patia the girl hadi pesa ya pads. So when the girl anaitisha pesa ya pads from the guy, anaadua osha yenye ulitumia jana, then enda ukaushe, then use it. Those are types of socio-economic abuse or socio-economic violence. So we are talking about socio-economic because the word socio means external interactions. Kuna watu pia wanakuwa wamefugiwa such that if it is your husband, hajakuruhusu ama anaweka boundaries, anakuzuia kwenda nje kutegamana ama ni kutagamana sio kutengamana, kutagamana na watu wengine, wachana na Kiswahili, to interact with other people. So you have been enslaved in the house, or you have been socially enslaved such that unaambiwa, I don't want to see you with a certain friend. Nisiwahi kukuona na so and so. Nikikuona na yeye tunaachana. Nikikuona na yeye nitakuadhibu. You see? So in a romantic relationship, and that's what I always make sure that I mention, that in a romantic relationship, you should have the freedom to interact with any person that you want to interact with. That a romantic relationship should not be slavery, whereby you don't have the freedom of association. You don't have the freedom of interaction. You don't have the freedom to associate with others. That is slavery. And that is social abuse. That is social violence. So social violence can show up in various ways, whereby we even have people who are physically abused in the public. That's also another form of social violence. We now have people who are being told in Sikuai kukuona na nani, and these especially relationships where the partner want to be the controlling, the dominant partner in the relationship, anataka control kila kitu, so anakuambia usiwahi interact na so and so. Ukitoka kazini unakuja direct, I'm your only friend. So if your spouse or your partner is your only friend, please, your life is in danger. Your life is in danger. Why? Because in most cases, when somebody wants to abuse you, one of the first tactics, which we will be looking at much later, is isolation. This person isolates you. Anakuweka pahali penye, akikunyorosha vizuri, akikugoga kofi, hata ushout hakuna mtu atasikia. Hata akikupiga hakuna mtu akwenda kuambia. Ana make sure ameharibu, disable other relationships that you have with friends, with family, in work, at work, in your religious groups, any group, any form of social interaction uko nayo, and make sure disable ama ameua those relationships such that he or she is the only person who has access to you. Na wakati ataku abuse, hakuna mtu mwingine atajua. There will be nobody who you'll be going to communicate to. So we need to be aware of socioeconomic violence. Anybody who is abusing you socially or economically, you need, that's a red flag, and we need to stop ignoring red flags. Majority of you in relationships, unaangalia red flag, unasema, red flag, ni sawa naona ni flag, but sio red vile. Wacha nigojee kidogo, wiki kama 2-3 hivi, naona kama iko maroon, si red. Wacha ikuwe red kidogo. Wacha, let it be a little bit more red. Eh? Your red bado sio dark red. Nataka hadi hii red flag ikuwe dark red. Sahi ni baby red. Ama ni you know, those are the kind of conversations that people are engaging with themselves. Ata change too. You know, he'll just change. Actually, you know what, Shiro? Amekuwa akinipiga. He has really been abusing me physically. But let me tell you something. I know I can change him. I know I have the power. I have the energy. I can change him. You know, that's a lady having a conversation with another lady. I can change him. I'm sorry, but by the time you'll be thinking about changing him, tutakuwa already tunakuzika. He will have killed you. The more you are saying, wacha hii red flag ikuwe more red, itakuwa red na damu yako. Damu yako ndio itafanya hiyo red flag ikuwe more red. So when you realize that there are red flags in a relationship, please, wacha kusema hii red flag sio red sana, wacha ikuwe red. No, itakuwa red na damu yako. So you need to be very careful and don't ignore any behavior, any gesture, anything that is happening in the relationship that's really creating kind of a discordance or unpleasantness. Una feel, you know, one thing that I always talk about when this is the last slide, which we'll be talking about stigma. So before I go to that, one thing that I always talk about when it comes to romantic relationships. So please don't ignore anything that is happening. Don't say that, you know, bado nampenda. I'm just giving him time to change. I still love him. Unajua kwanza venye huwa ananiita kababa. Kwanza akiniita kababa, hoi mimi, roho yangu inayayuka. Sasa hata kama mnasema anani abuse financially, hata kama huwa mnasema ananitusi huku in public, unaona tukiwa na yeye, anakuwa romantic. Imagine ananiitaka kababa, ananiitaka kamam. Unajua venye ananiitaka majina sweet, majina tamu. So utakufa hiyo majina tamu ukiitwa tu kababa. You know? So you need to be very careful. Don't entertain any form of violence in a relationship. simply in the name of love. And most people are entertaining any form of violence in a relationship mostly because sasa mabesta wangu na wanatuonaga venye tunafanana. It's like we look each other, you know, it's like we are even we are twinnies, love birds. Unajua sisi watu wanajua sisi ni love bird. Sasa tukiachana, itakuwa awkward. Sasa watu watasema aje? Mabeste watatuona aje? Utakufa mabeste na utaacha mabeste wakidate huyo mwenye atakuua kama atabaki uhai. So we need to be very careful. Let us not ignore anything when it comes to domestic violence. Now, our last slide is stigma. Stigma is there. People are still stigmatizing victims. People are still stigmatizing the entire narrative of domestic violence. And the worst kind of stigma that is there is where people are stigmatizing and they're stigmatizing against the survivors and the victims. So stigma is there, and that is very, it makes a lot of sense that right now we are having these kind of conversations so that we can try and add the stigma that has been there. Through these conversations, we eliminate the stigma. So every time you get a platform to eliminate any form of stigma of any kind of abuse or discordance or unpleasantness or behaviors that are in the society, please always take that opportunity. So I just want to briefly mention the type of stigmas that are involved or you find when it comes to gender-based violence. The first kind of stigma is personal or community acceptance of VAWG. So that is now the wider spectrum of domestic violence. That is VAWG. So when we're talking about personal or community acceptance, we are talking about people, a community which does not acknowledge. Number one, a community that does not acknowledge the presence of domestic violence. Wanasema hakuna kitu kama domestic violence. That's number one. That is personal or community acceptance. There's no acceptance. There's no acceptance of the reality. Watu wanakataa ku accept the reality of the fact that domestic violence is there. That is number one. Number two is where persons who are speaking out concerning domestic violence, they are not being that issue is not being taken serious. So unaenda unasema mimi nimekuwa abused and then the society is like wewe waacha. Hakuna kwanza huyo ananichia person wa kanisa. Hakuna venye anaweza kuwa. Kwanza unaona venye kwa prison worship huwa anaiba mpaka roho anashuka. Unasema nini? Ati nani amekupiga? Hakuna. Huyo venye tunamjua huku nje. Hakuna venye anaweza kuwa ni yeye amekugonga. Most likely hata wewe ndio umemgonga. Hata kama ni yeye amekugonga, wewe ndio ulianza hiyo vita. You know? Huyo ni chairperson wa church. Yeah? Na venye huwa anaongea anakuwa mpole. You know? Those are kind of narratives. That is lack of acceptance. And actually there are people, majority of abusers, majority of those people, especially men and women also, who abuse their partners outside, in the crowd, in the world, uko nje, in the community, they are angels. Let me tell you something. They are angels. That there's somebody who out there, mwenye unaweza ambia bwanangu amenigoga, akwambia wewe acha. Hakuna huyo venye namjua. There are people like that. Huko nje they portray a very good picture of who they are, but in reality akifika kwa nyumba anaweka kabuti ya white ya maraika chini, anachukua kabuti ya the devil. Out there to everybody he is an angel, but in the house he is the devil. There are people like that. And when we have societies that don't acknowledge that fact, then those people who are victims of domestic violence, they have nobody to talk to, they have nobody to help them, because akienda tu kuongea na abu, huyo hakuna hawezi kukugonga huyo. That guy cannot even hurt a fly. How comes anakugonga? So that is lack of acceptance. We have community stigma against survivors. Those people who have survived domestic violence, they are being stigmatized. Akipita tu kwa barabara, maybe aligogwa masikio moja ikatoka, mwingine maybe alikatwa matiti ikatoka, mwingine alikatwa makucha, like now the lady mwenye last week amekatwa makucha. So akipita kwa barabara kila mtu anamwangalia wakipoint fingers, ndiye huyo, ndiye huyo, ndiye huyo. So that is also form of stigma. So wale watu wenye wamesurvive the domestic violence or gender-based violence survivors, we are supposed to give them a very conducive and non-judgmental environment where they are going to feel accepted in the society, where they are going to feel loved, where they are going to feel that despite what they have gone through, they are still valuable, they are still worthy. So when we create that kind of a safe space, safe environment, they are also going to express themselves. They are going to speak out about the chaos, about the damage, about the abuse that they went through, and also we are going to help them to heal. When we stigmatize victims or survivors of domestic violence, we add salt to the wound. We don't help. We create even a bigger problem to the problem which is already in existence. Number 4, lack of trust in service providers and police. So this is where we have even encountered cases where already anaenda kwa polisi kustaki kwamba amerepiwa. Yule police officer amepata kwa police station, anamwambia ni sawa kuja hapa ndani uandikishe statement, and then that police officer anarape huyo mtu mwenye the lady mwenye amekuja kustaki kwamba amerepiwa, you know. So when we don't have trust with the people who are supposed to be fighting and helping to fight against domestic violence, then we may not really win this fight. That yule mtu mwenye unafaa kwenda kwake ndio akusaidie, huyo sasa ndiye mshukiwa mkuu. He is the worst perpetrator. Huyo sasa ndiye guru, ndiye master. You know, huyo ndiye bazoo waku abuse even other people. So when we don't have trust on the people who are supposed to be fostering and catalyzing these conversations, then we may really have a very limited opportunity or a shot to be able to fight against domestic violence. Now, we have lack of access to services and reporting systems. So there are people, especially in rural areas, who don't have access to services. And these services entails, for example, there's somebody out there, amerepiwa, lakini hakuna for example, the police karibu, wenye wanaweza kuja kushika huyo mtu mwenye analepu watoto kwa kijiji. If there's somebody who is being physically abused or emotionally abused, then there are no psychologists in that village who are going to intervene and help this person to heal from the damage which has been created by the chaos of that abuse. So lack of services, cross services, services that are accessible, that is also a form of stigma. When also people have no systems where they can be able to make a phone call, somewhere that you can lash and report an abuse, then again, that need to be addressed. We need to address that so that everybody, wherever they are, they can be able to access any form of service or intervention that relates to gender-based violence. As we move on with this conversation, we will also be able to give you some of the hotlines, free SMSs and calls that you can make somewhere in the offices, and especially the government offices and even organizations, where you can be able to report a case of domestic violence, and you can also be able to get help from such organizations and platforms. Lastly, on stigma, we have lack of knowledge or trust in services. We have talked about trust in services, but also lack of knowledge that there's somebody out there who is being abused, but they are not aware that that is actually abuse. And especially what I've called the psychological abuse. There are so many people who are being psychologically abused, and they are not aware that that is actually abuse. There's somebody who is being emotionally abused, socioeconomically abused, and other forms, and especially verbal abuse, but they are not aware that this is actually abuse. If you cannot recognize something, then you cannot call it what it is in reality. If you cannot recognize or acknowledge or know that somebody is abusing you, you cannot go and seek help. Because kama hujui mtu anakuabuse, hutaenda kuambia mtu mwingine you are being abused. You fikiria that this is normal. You will think this is normal. Huwa ananipiga once in a while, but it's normal. Si wanaume huwa wanapiga wanawake wao, that's the way to show them that wanawapenda. So huwa ananipiga mara moja kwa wiki ama mara mbili kwa wiki, and I'm okay with that. he is a man. Na mwanaume lazima akae akikugoga. Hakuna kitu kama hiyo. Hizo ni stories za jaba. A guy should not hit a woman. So when people don't have the knowledge or the know-how, they have not been empowered to know violence when it is violence, when they have not been empowered or psychoeducated to acknowledge or to know that this is abuse which is happening, then they cannot seek help and we cannot help them. So it is very important that we take note of the key things that we have been able to talk about today. Let us recognize abuse when it is abuse. Let us eradicate stigma. Let us also educate others on the types and all that. And also look at the statistics very keenly so that we can know that this thing is happening for real. It is happening to your neighbor. It is happening to your friend. It is happening to your sister. It could be happening to your parents. It could be happening to your coworker. It could be happening to anybody. That person who is close to you could be a victim of gender-based violence. That's why we always say, as I conclude, so that we can invite questions and any other forms of comment, that always when you see somebody who is close to you, there's change in behavior. There's a change that is not really explainable, then ask them, what is wrong? What is happening? And don't judge anybody who is going through domestic violence. Don't deny them the opportunity to express themselves, because anybody who is close to you could be suffering. Now, let me conclude at that point, because I have this bad habit of concluding my conclusions. I can conclude and then conclude that conclusion and then conclude the conclusion which I have just concluded, so that I don't behave like that again, everybody. Let us edit at that point. That is what I had prepared for today for the introduction of this discussion. I don't like it. I don't like discussing with people who are bold. That's why sometimes napenda kupiga kajoku moja hapa bili. Ndio mwenye alikuwa narara amuke. Ndio mwenye alikuwa amepoteza, alikuwa ameanza kufikiria other things, and as a rudi into the conversation. So thank you so much, everyone. Marcella, Mary, or Jacinta, back to you so that we can go to the next step as we conclude this conversation of the day. Thank you so much, everyone. I can see the flowers. Asante.
Wow, people are already celebrating. That was a powerful day one. And we are learning. I can't wait to see what will be here and what will be presented the whole week. Eliud, that was a very good foundation for us as we begin the week and as we begin the sessions of learning. Thank you. I can see people clapping for you now. We want to take a few minutes. We started at 7:40. Eliud, you've taken your 1 hour. Very well done. And I would request the listeners who have questions, you can unmute yourself, ask. But I'm sure today being the first day, I am sure there will be things that will also be covered that may not have been mentioned today. Anyone with a question? We are ready.
Yes, Marcella, I can see on the chat, Seth had requested to share a story, and I think it's wise to have maybe share as she has requested. Is it okay with you?
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay, Seth, kindly unmute and talk to us. I can see there are some hands up. We shall get to you kindly. Seth? Seth, you may need to unmute your microphone, then talk. She might be experiencing some challenge for my maybe end. So Seth, kindly, if you are hearing us, we can have you share with us tomorrow That is, if you are hearing us. Okay. Anse Q, you have your hand up. Kindly unmute, talk to us. Anse Q. Mr. Q, your hand is up.
Well, that could also be Anze Koi or something, could be a lady.
Anse, okay.
If you can hear us, your hand is up.
Okay, most probably
Maybe
it was an
time, Jacinta. Somebody
yes.
had typed a comment there.
Okay, you can take us through.
I can read that. This is Rael Owor who said, I am aware that acquiring a handgun or a rifle is somehow a lengthy process that involves finance in Kenya. Anasema, sina hiyo pesa. As we continue with the campaign against GBV, we also need to be safe. For those who own small weapons like pepper sprays or tasers, and I hope we don't reach that level of having to use them, I'd like to know if I'll be on the wrong side of the government in case I use it on someone when I don't feel safe or in danger. Eliud, tunaweza tembea na gun?
Okay, so I don't want to be quoted. Yeah, I wouldn't really want to answer that question directly, but if you have any, I would say, if you have any legally acquired weapon, let me use the word weapon, like a gun or the tasers or anything. So, you have acquired it legally for your protection. So if you are sure that somebody is intending to hurt you, you're free to use it. That's why you have it. But again, you need to be very careful so that you do not misunderstand or you do not react because maybe you have seen someone approaching you and you have thought that person is coming to me, and then you use it. If the other person says that I was not going to her or I was not doing this and you do not have evidence, then you'll be the one who will be in danger. So as we use them, yes, you can use them if you have legally acquired it. But again, make sure that you are using it when it is most needed. Because if you use it in a way that it might also land you into trouble, again, ni wewe utakuwa kwa shida. So we can use them, but again, we need to be very careful and actually make sure that there's a form of evidence that you can present to show that you reacted the way you reacted by hurting the other person out of self-defense, but actually there was real danger. You were in real danger. If you do not have a way to prove that, if there's no evidence, if there's no one to actually tell that for sure niliona, I was there, I was eyewitness, if you do not have that, be careful using them because again, you might find yourself in danger. Unaweza react as a way of self-defense, but by the end of the day upate, there's no evidence to show that actually you were in real danger. So jipate kwa shida. So we can use them if they are legally acquired, but again, very, very carefully. That's what I can say about that. So that again, I don't, mtu asiende kotini anikuota aseme Eliud during this day online webinar aliniambia nitumie and then sasa nijipate mahakamani pia. But if it is legally acquired and you're in real danger, feel free to use it. That's why you have it. That's what I can say about that. Back to you,
Thank
Jacinta.
you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I haven't seen any other question in the chat. Neither can I see a raised hand. but I believe it's because maybe we've just done the foundation. More and more questions will come as you continue to empower us, Eliud. So, Jacinta, can I give the mantle back to you?
Oh, yes, no problem. I think we are good to go. Let me read something from the chat from Seth. I need to hear it here and get assisted. Then she later on says, okay, she had requested to share something, and I had shared my number with the ham. I don't know whether at Newness Counseling Organization you do have pro bono services that I may refer the, I guess it's a lady to you.
All right. Thank you, Jacinta, for that question. So yes, at Newness Counseling Organization, we offer pro bono services. If somebody out there is suffering, you're in pain, you've not been able to heal from something, please don't say that therapy is expensive. Yes, there are people who are going to charge you really expensively, but us, because we are an NGO, we have a provision where we are supposed or expected to offer services for free. So what we usually do, and this is usually our approach, if we have a client who approaches us and then they say, I have this problem and I would like help. The first question always is, can you be able to pay for the sessions? They say yes or no. If yes, they pay for the sessions. If no, then if they cannot literally be able to pay anything for the sessions, then we give them free sessions. Then we always tell them, this is an organization and we allow donations. So in case hata kama sio sahi, our counselors are going to have sessions with you. Even if it is going to have, even if it is going to take you 10 sessions or 20 sessions to heal, our counselors are ready for that. But in case after 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, or whatever time you are financially okay, you are financially stable, then you can always feel free to come back to the organization and do a donation. So that is the approach that we always take. So that those people who can be able to pay for the sessions, they pay. And then we also use that money to facilitate our counselors in one way or another when now they are those paying clients. And also, it also helps us as an organization because we don't have donors yet. We have not been able to procure or secure a donor who can be able to finance our activities. So that is the money sasa huwa tunatumia some of the programs zenye huwa tunafanya in the community. So yes, we offer pro bono services, 100% pro bono, sometimes 50% if the client can. Kama client anaweza lipa, analipa. But yes, we have pro bono services in the organization. So you can just inbox me the client's contact, Jacinta, later. Then I'm going to assign her or him one of our counselors who is going also to work with her na amsaidie.
Thank you so much, Eliud, Marcella, and Mary. It was such a powerful kickstarting. We are looking forward to how tomorrow shall unfold. Otherwise, we are really doing good. I heard Marcella mention that we are at 30. The numbers, quorum out of you having students, but in most cases, I encourage them to share screen so that we don't explicit our limit haraka. So I'm really impressed by the attendance, punctuality, and even the cooperation to this end. At least the networks were stable through and through. We thank God so far. So at that point, let me express my gratitude. And as we look forward to tomorrow, thank you so much. And everyone have a very good, wonderful evening. Sorry. I guess, let me confirm kindly. Kindly allow me to confirm that Skeva Swaro, my supervisor, is in our midst. Skeva Swaro, kindly say something and close the meeting for us, kindly. Thank you, Skeva. Good night, everyone. Let's meet tomorrow at time like this, same venue, same time. Thank you so much.